Commander Jack Hayes looked out the window of his transport ship and felt his stomach turn. 23 alien warships surrounded the human colony below. Each ship was massive, bigger than anything humanity had ever built. Their weapons glowed with a dark red light that made Jack think of death. The Vraks had arrived 2 days ago. Their fleet commander, Admiral Krathax, had sent a simple message to New Providence Colony: surrender or die. The 3 million humans living on the planet had 48 hours to decide. That time was almost up. Jack stood on the bridge of the civilian transport ship called Horizon's Edge. He was not a soldier. He was a cargo hauler who had been making a routine supply run when the Vraks showed up. Now he and 200 other civilians were trapped in orbit, unable to leave, forced to watch whatever came next. Captain Lisa Morgan appeared on the communication screen. She ran the colony's defense coordination from the surface. Her face looked tired. She had not slept since the Vraks arrived. "Any word from Earth?" Jack asked. Lisa shook her head. "They received our distress call. They said help is coming. But Jack, the nearest human warship is 3 days away. We don't have 3 days. We have 3 hours. Jack looked back at the Vraks fleet. Every ship was in position, weapons charged and ready. The Vraks were not known for empty threats. When they said they would destroy a planet, they meant it. "What about negotiating?" Jack asked. "Maybe we can buy more time." "The Vraks don't negotiate," Lisa said. "Not really, they give orders. You either obey or they crush you. That's how they've controlled half the galaxy for 300 years. Jack had heard the stories. The Vraks' dominion was the most powerful force in this region of space. They had conquered dozens of species. Their military was enormous. Their philosophy was simple: show overwhelming force and make your enemies too scared to fight. When humanity first made contact with the galactic community 5 years ago, the Vraks had watched with interest. Humans were new, weak, with only a handful of ships. The Vraks had been patient at first, letting humanity build a few colonies, establish some trade routes. But now they had decided it was time. Time for humanity to bow down and become another servant species. "How many warships does Earth have?" asked Danny Kim, one of the transport pilots standing nearby. 14, Jack said quietly. "We have 14 warships total. The Vraks have thousands." Danny laughed, but it was not a happy sound. 14 ships, and the Vraks sent 23 just for this one colony. They're not even worried about us. Lisa's face on the screen showed frustration. Earth's government made a choice 5 years ago. They decided to focus on building strong colonies and good living conditions for our people. They said we didn't need a huge military fleet. "They were wrong," Danny said. "Maybe," Lisa replied. "Or maybe they knew something we don't." Jack wanted to believe that. He wanted to think that Earth had some kind of plan, but looking at those 23 Vraks dreadnoughts, each one capable of turning a city into glass, he felt hopeless. The Vraks had studied humanity carefully. They knew exactly how many ships Earth possessed. They knew where each ship was located. Their intelligence was perfect. The nearest human vessel was the destroyer called Wellington, and it was 3 days away at maximum speed. Even if it arrived, one destroyer against 23 dreadnoughts would be suicide. Admiral Krathax appeared on the communication channel. His face was reptilian, with dark scales and yellow eyes that showed no mercy. He had been speaking to Lisa every few hours, each time sounding more impatient. "Your time is ending, humans," Krathax said. "I grow tired of waiting. You have 1 more hour. Then we will demonstrate what happens to species who defy the Vraks' dominion." The channel closed before Lisa could respond. Jack felt anger rising in his chest. "We can't just sit here. There has to be something we can do." "Like what?" Danny asked. "Ram our transport ships into their dreadnoughts? We'd be vaporized before we got close." Lisa spoke calmly, though Jack could hear the stress in her voice. Earth told me to trust them. They said help was coming. I know it sounds crazy, but I believe them." "You believe in magic?" Danny said. "Because that's what it would take. We need a miracle." On the planet below, people were gathering in the streets. Some were praying, some were crying, some were angry, demanding that the colonial government find a way to fight back. But there was no way. New Providence had no military defenses, no shields, no weapons platforms. It was a peaceful colony, built for farming and research. Jack thought about his sister who lived on the planet. She had 2 young children. He thought about the schools, the parks, the small towns where people had built homes and lives. All of it was about to be destroyed because humanity was too weak to defend itself. The Vrax fleet began moving into firing positions. Jack watched their formation change. They were spreading out, each ship targeting a different section of the planet. When they fired, they would hit every major city at once. Millions would die in seconds. "This is it," Danny whispered. "They're really going to do it." Lisa's voice came through the speaker, steady despite everything. "All civilians in orbit, this is Captain Morgan. Move your ships to the far side of the planet. Get as much mass between you and the Vrax as possible. It won't save you, but it might give you a few extra seconds." Jack started to give orders to his crew, but then something caught his eye. On the sensor display, there was a small blip. Just for a moment, then it was gone. "Did you see that?" he asked Danny. "See what?" "On the sensors. Something was there, then vanished." Danny checked the display. "I don't see anything. Space is empty. Just us and the Vrax." Jack stared at the screen. He was sure he had seen something. But the sensors showed nothing now, just empty vacuum. Admiral Krathax's voice boomed across all channels. "Humans of New Providence, you have refused to accept Vrax authority. You will now see the price of your defiance. All ships, prepare to fire. Target the population centers. On my command, you will—" He stopped mid-sentence. Jack looked at his sensor display. Every screen on the bridge suddenly showed the same thing, an energy spike, massive, coming from nowhere. "What is that?" Danny asked, his voice rising. "Where is that coming from?" Lisa's face on the communication screen showed confusion. "I'm reading it too. Energy signature like nothing I've ever seen. But there's nothing there. Sensors show empty space." The Vrax fleet was reacting. Their ships were turning, scanning, searching for the source of the energy reading. Jack could hear confused voices on the Vrax communication channels. They had detected it too. Then space itself seemed to tear apart. A ship appeared. It materialized 3,000 kilometers from the Vrax flagship, appearing out of absolute nothing like a ghost becoming solid. The vessel was smaller than a Vrax dreadnought, but its design was like nothing Jack had ever seen. The hull was black, so dark it seemed to absorb light. Weapons covered every surface, and they were moving, shifting, reconfiguring themselves as he watched. "Is that one of ours?" Danny asked. 14. Light years away from New Providence, deep beneath the surface of Earth, Admiral Karen Price sat in the command center and watched the situation develop. The room was dark, except for the glow of dozens of screens showing tactical data, ship positions, and communication feeds. Around her, the officers of Joint Strategic Command watched in silence. They had trained for this moment. They had planned for it. But now that it was actually happening, the weight of their decisions felt heavy. Colonel Peter Nash stood beside the main tactical display. He was the chief strategist for Earth's military, a man who had spent 30 years studying warfare. He pointed at the screen showing the Vrax fleet surrounding New Providence. 23 dreadnoughts, Peter said. The Vrax are following their standard doctrine. Overwhelming force. They want everyone to see their power. They think if they show enough strength, the enemy will surrender before fighting even starts. Lieutenant Commander Amy Sullivan brought up additional data on her console. She was young, only 32, but she had proven to be brilliant at understanding alien psychology. The Vrax culture is built around visibility, she explained. Every battle must be witnessed. Every victory must be seen. For them, war is as much about display as it is about actual fighting. They record everything and broadcast it across their empire. Karen nodded slowly. She understood what Amy meant. The Vrax were powerful, yes. Their fleet was massive. But their way of thinking about warfare was predictable. They could not imagine any other approach. Which is exactly why they will never understand us, Karen said quietly. Peter pulled up historical data on his screen. Humanity learned different lessons from our wars. We learned that the most dangerous enemy is the one you never see, the submarine under the water, the sniper in the shadows, the spy who steals your secrets before you know they are gone. The Vrax think power must be visible, Amy added. We know that true power is invisible until the moment it strikes. Karen stood up and walked to the main screen. She could see the countdown timer. New Providence had less than an hour before the Vrax started firing. The destroyer Wellington was still 3 days away. Every other human warship was too far to help. But the Vrax intelligence was wrong. They thought they knew about all of humanity's military vessels. They had counted 14 warships, tracked their movements, cataloged their capabilities. What the Vrax did not know, could not know, was that humanity had built a 15th ship, a ship that existed in no official registry, a ship that had been designed from the beginning to be invisible. Karen activated the secure communication channel. The encryption was so advanced that even if the Vrax intercepted the signal, they would never break the code. This is Admiral Price to Sierra 15. You are authorized to proceed with Operation Midnight Sun. Show them what happens when they threaten human lives. The response came back after a 3-second delay. Sierra 15 acknowledges. Beginning approach. 14 light-years away. In the absolute darkness between star systems, the warship designated Sierra 15 received its orders. The crew had been waiting in that empty region of space for 3 years. 3 years of silence. 3 years of watching, 3 years of patience. Captain Brandon Hughes sat in the command chair and allowed himself a small smile. Finally. After all this time, finally they would show the galaxy what humanity was capable of. Helm, Brandon said calmly. Plot an intercept course for New Providence. Maximum stealth approach. I want us in the system without them detecting so much as a radio wave. The helmsman, Lieutenant Chris Martinez, worked quickly at his console. Course plotted, sir. Estimated arrival time is 42 minutes. We'll enter the system from the southern ecliptic, using the local star's radiation to mask our approach. Weapons, Brandon continued. Begin pre-strike protocols. I want target locks on all 23 Vrax vessels, firing solutions for complete fleet neutralization. Lieutenant Kyle Patterson, the weapons officer, was already working. Aye, sir. Loading antimatter torpedoes, charging railgun capacitors, bringing directed energy weapons online. Target acquisition will begin when we're in range. Brandon looked around his bridge. Every station was manned by the best crew humanity had to offer. They had been selected carefully, trained extensively, and given 3 years to become perfectly coordinated. The ship itself, officially designated Sierra 15 but called Nightfall by her crew, was a masterpiece of human engineering. The ship had cost more to build than the rest of Earth's Navy combined. Every resource, every breakthrough in technology, every new discovery had been poured into this single vessel and her 4 sister ships. The public did not know they existed. Most of Earth's government did not know they existed. Only a handful of people knew the truth. Engineering, Brandon said. Status report. Lieutenant Nicole Chen's voice came through from the engineering deck. All systems optimal, sir. Fusion cores running at 120% capacity. Exotic matter reserves are full. Stealth systems are functioning perfectly. We're running so cold that we're barely above cosmic background radiation. The Nightfall's engines came online. not with the bright flare of conventional drives, but with a whisper of displaced space-time that left almost no detectable signature. The ship began to accelerate, moving faster and faster, yet remaining invisible to any sensor system in known space. Brandon thought about the philosophy behind their mission. Other species built larger fleets. They competed to see who could construct the biggest ships, the most powerful weapons, the most impressive displays of force. Humanity had taken a different path. "Why build 1,000 ships when you can build 5 that are impossible to detect?" Brandon said aloud. Kyle looked up from his weapons console. "Sir?" "Just thinking about our doctrine," Brandon explained. "The Vraks have thousands of ships, but every single one of those ships can be seen, tracked, counted. They think that's strength. They think showing their power prevents wars. And we think differently," Kyle said. "We think that invisible power prevents wars," Brandon confirmed. "If your enemy never knows where you are, never knows when you might strike, never knows how many of you exist, then they can never feel safe attacking you. Fear of the unknown is more powerful than fear of visible strength." Amy had explained it to him once back on Earth. She had studied Earth's military history going back thousands of years. The most successful forces were often the ones their enemies could not see. Guerrilla fighters, special operations teams, intelligence agencies. They won not by being the biggest, but by being impossible to predict or detect. The Nightfall crossed into the New Providence system 40 minutes later. The Vraks fleet was in position around the planet, weapons charged, ready to fire. On the planet below, 3 million humans waited for death. The Vraks' sensors saw nothing. Space appeared empty. Their instruments detected no ships, no energy signatures, no threats. As far as their technology could tell, they were alone in the system except for the helpless human civilians. "We're in position," Chris reported. 3,000 kilometers from their flagship. They have no idea we're here. Brandon felt the familiar calm that came before combat. He had trained for this his entire career. "Weapons. Report." "Target locks acquired on all 23 vessels," Kyle said. "Firing solutions calculated and confirmed. Antimatter torpedoes are armed and ready. Railguns are loaded. Directed energy weapons are charged. Sir, we can engage at any time." "What's the status of their shields?" Brandon asked. "Shields are active on all vessels," Kyle answered. "Standard Vraks military grade. Our torpedoes will penetrate them without difficulty. The adaptive guidance systems will rewrite the shield harmonics in real time. They'll pass through as if the shields don't exist." Brandon nodded. That was one of humanity's breakthroughs. Instead of building bigger weapons to smash through shields, they had built smarter weapons that simply went around the problem. The Vraks would never see it coming. Nicole's voice came from engineering. "Sir, we can maintain full stealth through the entire engagement if needed. We have enough power to stay invisible while fighting. They'll never get a sensor lock on us." "Good," Brandon said. "Let's do this correctly. Kyle, I want the first salvo to be devastating. Hit 6 ships simultaneously. Disable 3, destroy 3. Make them understand that they're already dead." "Aye, sir. First salvo programmed and ready." Brandon looked at the tactical display one more time. 23 Vraks dreadnoughts. Hundreds of Vraks crew members on each ship. He felt no joy at what was about to happen. War was not something to celebrate, but the Vraks had made their choice. They had threatened human lives. They had come here ready to commit murder on a massive scale. Now they would learn that humanity was not Admiral Krath-X, had been preparing for this moment for 2 days. He sat in his command chair aboard the flagship Dominant Fist, surrounded by his officers, watching the countdown timer approach 0. In a few moments, he would give the order and New Providence would burn. Another human colony destroyed, another example set. The Vraks' way of war was simple and had worked for 300 years. You showed overwhelming force. You made your enemy see that resistance was pointless. You crushed one target so completely that all the others surrendered without fighting. It was efficient. It was practical. It worked. Status of the human fleet? Krathax asked his tactical officer. No change, Admiral. The nearest human warship is still 3 days away. No other vessels are within range. We detect only civilian transports in orbit. They are helpless. Krathax felt satisfaction. The humans had talked big when they first entered galactic space. They had been confident, almost arrogant. They had refused to acknowledge Vrak's superiority. Now they would learn. Sir, his communications officer said, the human colonial leader is requesting to speak with you again. Krathax laughed. Still trying to negotiate? Still hoping for more time? No, I am tired of their delays. Prepare to fire. But he opened the channel anyway. He wanted the human captain to see his face when her world died. Captain Lisa Morgan appeared on the screen. She looked tired but not defeated. That annoyed Krathax. She should be begging. She should be crying. Admiral, Lisa said, you don't have to do this. We can find a peaceful solution. The peaceful solution is your surrender, Krathax replied. But you have refused. Now you will serve as an example to the rest of your species. Let them see what happens when you defy the Vrak's dominion. You'll regret this, Lisa said quietly. Krathax laughed again. Regret? You have no ships, no weapons, no defenses. What could I possibly regret? He closed the channel before she could answer. All ships, Krathax announced to his fleet. Target the primary population centers. 3 million humans live on that planet. I want to reduce that number to 0. Fire on my command. His weapons officer began the final targeting sequence. Each of the 23 dreadnoughts locked onto a different city or settlement. When they fired together, they would blanket the planet in destruction. Nothing would survive. Krathax was about to give the final order when his tactical officer suddenly shouted, Admiral! Massive energy spike! Bearing 270! Mark 18! Krathax turned to his screen. What? Where? I don't know, sir. It appeared out of nowhere. Energy readings are off the scale. Before Krathax could respond, space itself seemed to tear open. A ship appeared, materializing 3,000 kilometers from the dominant fist. It was smaller than a Vrak's dreadnought, maybe half the size, but its design was completely alien. The hull was black, so dark it seemed to pull in light. Weapons covered every surface, and they were moving, reconfiguring themselves in ways that should not be possible. What is that? Krathax demanded. Where did it come from? His science officer worked frantically at her console. Unknown, Admiral. It appeared without warning. It was not there, and then suddenly it was. Our sensors detected nothing until the moment it decloaked. Decloaked? Krathax felt something he had not experienced in years. Fear. You mean it was there the entire time? Invisible? That's impossible, his tactical officer said. No stealth system can hide a ship that completely. Our sensors would have detected something. Energy emissions, gravitational distortion, something. Apparently not, the science officer replied, her voice shaking. Krathax stared at the human ship. On its hull, barely visible against the black surface, was written a single word. Nightfall. Is it human? He asked. Reading human design elements, yes. But Admiral, the technology, this should not exist. The power readings alone suggest a reactor that could not possibly fit in a ship that size. The weapon systems are unlike anything in our database. This is centuries beyond what humans should be capable of. Krathax felt his certainty cracking. The humans were supposed to be weak, primitive, easy to dominate. But this ship, this impossible ship, challenged everything he knew. Target that vessel, he ordered. All ships, destroy it immediately. 23 Vrak's dreadnoughts began turning their weapons toward the Nightfall. Their targeting systems tried to lock onto the human ship, but something was wrong. The lock would establish, then break. Establish, then break. The nightfall seemed to flicker in and out of their sensors, even though they could see it with their own eyes. "I cannot maintain target lock," the weapons officer shouted. "They are jamming our system somehow." "Then fire blind," Krathax roared. "Saturate that area with weapons fire. They cannot dodge everything." The Vrax fleet opened fire. Energy beams lanced through space. Missiles streaked toward the nightfall. The amount of firepower being unleashed would have destroyed a small moon. But the nightfall moved. It accelerated with impossible speed, dodging most of the incoming fire. The few shots that should have hit seemed to pass through empty space as if the ship had never been there. Krathax watched in disbelief as the human vessel danced between their weapons with grace that should not be possible for something that size. "How?" he whispered. "How are they doing this?" Then the nightfall fired back. The first salvo of 6 antimatter torpedoes launched from the human ship. Krathax watched them on the tactical display, expecting his fleet's shields to stop them easily. Vrax's shields were the best in the galaxy. No torpedo could penetrate them without overwhelming firepower. The torpedoes passed through the shields as if the barriers did not exist. 6 explosions lit up space. 3 Virax dreadnoughts simply ceased to exist, torn apart by antimatter detonations. 3 more went dark as the blasts disabled their main power systems. In less than 5 seconds, the Nightfall had eliminated 6 ships from his fleet. "Report!" Krathax screamed. "What happened to our shields?" "I don't know," his science officer cried. "The torpedoes passed right through. It's as if they rewrote the shield harmonics in real time. That should be impossible." The Nightfall fired again. This time different weapons. Railguns accelerated solid projectiles to incredible speeds. The rounds punched through armor plating like it was paper. Directed energy weapons carved through hull sections with surgical precision. Missile pods released swarms of smaller munitions that hunted down and destroyed the Vrax point defense systems. Krathax watched his fleet die. Ship after ship took critical damage. Some exploded. Some went dead in space, their crews killed by the sudden loss of life support. The Nightfall moved through them like a predator among prey, its weapons never stopping, never missing. "Return fire! Return fire!" Krathax ordered, but his fleet was in chaos. Ships tried to shoot at the human vessel, but they could not get a clear lock. They fired blindly, hitting nothing but empty space, while the Nightfall continued its attack. In 45 seconds, 14 of his 23 dreadnoughts were destroyed or disabled. 14 ships, gone, just like that. "This is not possible," Krathax said. "This cannot be happening." His tactical officer was pale. "Admiral, we need to retreat. Now. We cannot fight this vessel. It is too advanced. We are being slaughtered." Krathax wanted to refuse, wanted to order his remaining ships to press the attack. But he was not a fool. He could see the truth on his screens. His fleet was being destroyed by a single human ship, one ship, and they could not even hurt it in return. "All vessels," he said, his voice bitter with defeat. "Retreat. Jump to hyperspace immediately. Scatter formation. Do not group together." The 9 remaining Vrax dreadnoughts that were still functional began emergency jumps to hyperspace. They fled in different directions, hoping that the human ship could not chase them all. Krathax watched the tactical display as his fleet vanished from the system. His flagship, the Dominant Fist, was one of the last to jump. Just before they entered hyperspace, he saw the Nightfall on his screen, hovering in space, surrounded by the wreckage of Vrax ships. It made no move to pursue them. That somehow made it worse. The human ship was letting them run. It could have destroyed them all if it wanted. It was choosing to let them live. Back in the New Providence system, Jack Hayes stood on the bridge of the horizon's edge, staring at his sensor display in shock. The Vrax fleet was gone, destroyed or fled. The battle had lasted less than a minute. One human ship had defeated 23 Vorax dreadnoughts. Did that really just happen? Danny whispered beside him. Jack could not answer. He watched the Nightfall floating in space, its weapons powering down. Around it, pieces of destroyed Vrax ships drifted in the darkness, the evidence of the most one-sided battle he had ever seen. Lisa's face appeared on the communication screen. She was crying, but smiling. "We're safe. The colony is safe. They're leaving." "What was that ship?" Jack asked. "Where did it come from?" "I don't know," Lisa admitted. "But whoever they are, they just saved 3 million lives." The Nightfall began moving, slowly drifting away from the debris field. Its engines engaged, that strange whisper of movement that left almost no trail. Jack tried to hail the ship, to thank whoever was aboard, but received no response. Then, before his eyes, the sensor signature began to fade. The ship was still visible, but its energy readings were dropping. Within seconds, it vanished from his sensors entirely, even though he could still see it with his own eyes. Then even the visual image began to disappear, like watching something fade into fog. The Nightfall was cloaking again, returning to invisibility. Admiral Krathax sat in his damaged command center as the dominant fist fled through hyperspace. Around him, his officers worked in silence, still processing what had happened. The battle, if it could even be called that, had lasted less than a minute. In that time, they had lost 14 dreadnoughts and had been completely helpless to stop it. He looked at the damage reports scrolling across his screen. The ships that had survived were damaged in various ways, systems failing, hull breaches, crew casualties, and all of this from a single human vessel that they had never even managed to hit. "How many ships did we destroy?" Krathax asked quietly. His tactical officer looked up, his expression ashamed. "None, Admiral. We did not score a single hit on the human vessel. Every shot missed or was somehow deflected." Krathax felt his scales bristle with anger and humiliation. In 300 years of Vrax military history, no fleet had ever been defeated so completely. No enemy had ever made them look so helpless. "Analysis," he demanded. "Explain to me how this happened." His science officer brought up data on her console. "The human ship appears to have stealth technology far beyond anything we have encountered. It was in the system with us, possibly for hours, and we detected nothing. When it decloaked, our targeting systems could not maintain a lock. Every time we achieved a fix, it fed false data to our sensors." "What about their weapons?" Krathax asked. "The antimatter torpedoes used some kind of adaptive guidance system. They analyzed our shield harmonics in real time and adjusted their own signatures to pass through. Our shields might as well have not existed. The railgun rounds were accelerated to speeds we did not think possible, and their energy weapons showed focusing technology we have never seen." Krathax slammed his hand against his chair. "This should not be possible. The humans are a young species. They have been in space for barely a century. How do they have technology centuries beyond ours?" "I do not know, Admiral, but clearly, we have underestimated them severely." The communication officer spoke up. "Sir, we are receiving messages from the other surviving ships in the fleet. They are requesting orders." "Tell them to return to Vrax Prime," Krathax said. "We will report this to the High Command. They need to know what we have encountered." But before he could close the channel, another communication came through. It was not from his fleet. It was from the human ship, the Nightfall. The screen flickered and a human face appeared. The man was middle-aged with short dark hair and calm eyes. He wore a military uniform that Krathax did not recognize. The rank insignia showed he was a captain. "Admiral Krathax," the human said, his voice level and professional, "I am Captain Brandon Hughes of the Terran Confederacy. You are alive because we chose to let you live. You will return to your home world and deliver a message to your leaders. Krathax wanted to snarl at the human, to threaten him, to show that the Vraks were not afraid. But the words caught in his throat. This human had just destroyed most of his fleet without taking a single hit in return. Threats would be meaningless. "What message?" Krathax asked, hating how weak his voice sounded. Brandon leaned forward slightly. His expression was not angry or cruel, just serious. "Your Dominion fights with numbers. You believe that victory belongs to whoever can field the largest fleet. You think warfare is about making the biggest display of power, about being seen." He paused, letting those words sink in. "Humanity learned a different lesson from our history," Brandon continued. "We learned that wars are won by the enemy you never see coming, the attack that happens when you think you are safe, the threat that exists but cannot be counted or tracked." Behind Brandon, Krathax could see parts of the Nightfall's bridge, other human officers working at their stations. The interior was sleek, efficient, and filled with technology that looked decades beyond what should exist. "Every species in this galaxy knows exactly how many warships humanity possesses," Brandon said. 14 vessels all registered and cataloged. Your intelligence services have tracked them all. You know where they are at any given moment." "Yes," Krathax said carefully. "We do." "But what you do not know," Brandon said, his voice taking on an edge, "is how many ships like the Nightfall exist in the dark places between stars, hidden, waiting, watching." Krathax felt a chill run through him. "How many?" Brandon smiled slightly, but there was no warmth in it. "That is exactly the right question, Admiral. And the answer is, you will never know. It might be 1 ship, it might be 10, it might be 100. You will never be able to count them because you will never be able to find them." He stood up from his command chair, and the camera followed him. "Every time your Dominion gathers a fleet," Brandon said, "you will wonder if we are watching. Every time you threaten a human world, you will have to ask yourself if a ghost ship is already there, invisible, weapons armed, waiting for you to make the wrong move." Krathax understood what the human was doing. This was psychological warfare on a scale the Vraks had never experienced. The not knowing would be worse than any visible threat. "This is humanity's doctrine, Admiral," Brandon continued. "We do not need to conquer the galaxy. We do not need the largest fleet. We just need you to understand that you will never, ever see us coming. You will never know if the empty space beside your flagship is truly empty. You will never be certain that you are safe." The camera showed another human officer, a young woman working at a weapons console. She looked up and spoke clearly. "Target locks maintained on your ship, Admiral. My systems can track you through hyperspace. If the captain gives the order, you will not make it home." Krathax checked his own sensors. They showed nothing. No human ship following them. But clearly, that meant nothing. The Nightfall was out there somewhere, watching, even though he could not see it. Brandon's face filled the screen again. "We are letting you go because we want you to deliver this message. Tell your leaders. Tell your military. Tell every species in the Vraks Dominion. Humanity is not to be threatened. We have the means to protect ourselves, and we will use those means without hesitation." "And if we come back?" Krathax asked. "With more ships? With our entire fleet?" "Then you will face more of us," Brandon replied calmly. "And you will never know how many until it is too late. That is the beauty of invisible warships, Admiral. You cannot plan for what you cannot detect. You cannot fight what you cannot find. You can only fear what might be lurking in the shadows." The communication screen went dark. The human had ended the transmission. Krathax sat in silence for a long moment. His officers waited for him to speak. Finally, he turned to his communication officer. "Record everything that happened here," he ordered. "Every sensor reading. Every piece of data. The High Command needs to see the truth. Yes, Admiral. And send a message ahead, Krathax continued. Tell them that the situation has changed. The humans are not what we thought they were. They are not weak. They are not helpless. They are dangerous in ways we never anticipated. His tactical officer spoke quietly. What will the High Command do? I do not know, Krathax admitted. But I know what I will recommend. We leave the humans alone. All of them. Every colony. Every ship. We do not threaten them. We do not challenge them. We stay far away from their space. They beat us with one ship, the tactical officer said. One ship against 23. Exactly, Krathax replied. One ship. And we have no idea how many more they have. The humans said it themselves. We will never know. And that uncertainty will haunt every military decision we make from now on. Back in the New Providence system, the Nightfall hung in space, still cloaked, watching the Vrax ships flee. On the bridge, Brandon sat back down in his command chair and let out a slow breath. Well done, everyone, he said to his crew. Clean engagement. No casualties on our side. Mission accomplished. Kyle looked up from his weapons console. Sir, do you think the Vrax will actually leave humanity alone? For a while, yes, Brandon replied. Fear is a powerful motivator. We have given them something they cannot quantify. They know we have at least one stealth ship. They do not know if we have more. That uncertainty will make them cautious. Nicole's voice came from engineering. Captain, we used approximately 30% of our antimatter reserves. All other systems nominal. We can remain on station or return to our patrol route. Brandon thought about it. Take us back to Sector 7. Resume our waiting position. Someone else might need us soon. Chris began plotting the course. Aye, sir. Setting course for Sector 7. ETA 4 days at stealth speed. The Nightfall began to move, drifting away from New Providence and the debris of the destroyed Vrax fleet. Within minutes, even the best sensors on the planet below lost track of the ship. It simply vanished into the darkness of space, as if it had never existed. On the surface of New Providence, people were celebrating in the streets. They had been saved. The Vrax were gone. The threat was over. But very few of them knew the truth about what had saved them. They knew a human ship had appeared, had fought the Vrax, and had won. But the details, the capabilities, the implications of what that ship represented, those were kept secret. In the command center beneath Earth, Admiral Karen Price watched the celebration broadcasts and allowed herself a small smile. The operation had gone exactly as planned. The Vrax had been shown that humanity was not helpless, but more importantly, they had been left uncertain about how much power humanity truly possessed. Colonel Peter Nash came to stand beside her. The Vrax fleet is heading home. Early reports suggest they are badly shaken. Admiral Krathax is already sending recommendations to his leadership to avoid any further conflicts with humanity. Good, Karen said. That was the goal. Not to start a war, but to prevent one. Do you think other species will test us? Peter asked. Some might, Karen admitted, but word will spread quickly. The Vrax are one of the most powerful military forces in this region. If they were defeated so easily, others will think twice before threatening us. Amy Sullivan walked over with a data pad. We are monitoring communications across multiple alien networks. The story is already spreading. Some species are calling it impossible. Others are calling it the beginning of a new era. Everyone is trying to figure out how many stealth ships we have. Karen's smile grew slightly wider. And what are we telling them? 3 weeks after the battle at New Providence, the Galactic Council convened an emergency session. The Great Chamber on the neutral station of Unity Point was filled with representatives from 47 different species. The air hummed with translated conversations as delegates debated the situation that had shaken the established order. The Vrax delegation sat in their section, notably subdued. Admiral Krathax had delivered his report to the Vrax High Command, and the response had been swift. The Vrax announced the immediate withdrawal of all territorial demands against humanity. They proposed a mutual non-aggression treaty. The same Vrax who had threatened to burn human colonies now spoke of peaceful coexistence. Ambassador Helen Cooper represented humanity at the Council for the first time as a full member rather than a petitioner. She stood at the central podium, a small woman with gray hair and sharp eyes, looking out at the assembled aliens with calm confidence. The council speaker, a tall insectoid being named Click Seventh, addressed her formally. Ambassador Cooper, the council has reviewed the incident at New Providence. The Vrax have submitted their official reports. We have also received testimony from neutral observers and data from various sources. The Council wishes to understand humanity's military capabilities and intentions. Helen nodded. The Terran Confederacy is happy to provide clarity. At New Providence, a Vrax fleet threatened 3 million human civilians. When diplomacy failed, we responded with appropriate force to protect our people. The Vrax fleet withdrew. No human lives were lost. A delegate from the Zephyr Collective, a species known for their advanced sensors, spoke up. Our monitoring stations detected unusual energy signatures during the engagement. A human vessel appeared from nowhere, engaged multiple Vrax warships, and then vanished again. We request information about this stealth technology. The vessel in question utilized standard human defensive systems, Helen replied carefully. We do not share classified military technology with other species, just as the Zephyr Collective does not share the specifications of your quantum communication arrays. That caused some murmuring in the chamber. The Zephyr delegate sat back, apparently satisfied with the answer. It was a diplomatic way of saying that every species had secrets. A Corthan representative, one of the warrior species that prided themselves on honor in combat, stood up. The Vrax claim they were defeated by a single human ship. Is this accurate? One ship responded to the threat at New Providence. Yes, Helen confirmed. How many warships does humanity possess? The Corthan asked directly. Helen smiled slightly. The Terran Confederacy maintains 14 registered warships for defense and patrol duties. This information is publicly available. The Corthan warrior growled low. And how many unregistered ships do you have? Ships like the one that destroyed a Vrax battle fleet? That information is classified, Helen replied. I am sure you understand. The Corthan Empire does not publish the locations of all your military installations or the full capabilities of your weapons. Neither does humanity. The chamber erupted in discussion. Some species seemed satisfied with her answer. Others were clearly concerned. The balance of power in the galaxy had just shifted, and nobody was quite sure how much. The council speaker raised a manipulator for silence. The council recognizes that all species maintain some level of military secrecy. However, the incident at New Providence has raised concerns. The Vrax were decisively defeated by what appears to be significantly advanced technology. The Council seeks assurance that humanity does not intend aggressive expansion. Helen's expression became serious. The Terran Confederacy has no desire for conquest. We do not want territory that belongs to others. We do not seek to dominate other species. Our only goal is to ensure the safety and freedom of human worlds and human people. She paused, looking around the chamber. However, she continued, her voice carrying weight, humanity will not tolerate threats against our colonies or our citizens. We will not bow to intimidation. We will not become a subject species. Any force that threatens human lives will face consequences. That is not a threat. That is simply a statement of fact. Click Seventh's translator rendered a sound that might have been approval. The Council respects the right of all member species to self-defense. The question before us is whether humanity should be granted full council membership with all associated rights and privileges. The vote was called. In the past, humanity's application had been blocked by the Vracs and several other powerful species. They had argued that humans were too new, too weak, too unstable to be full members. Now, every species voted in favor. The tally was unanimous. Helen accepted the council's decision with grace, but inside, she felt a surge of satisfaction. Humanity had gone from petitioner to equal in the span of one battle. Not because they had conquered anyone, but because they had demonstrated that conquering them would be too costly. After the session ended, several ambassadors approached Helen privately. The Zephyr Collective offered trade agreements. The Korthan Empire proposed joint training exercises. Even some Vrax junior diplomats, looking embarrassed, suggested cultural exchange programs. But it was the conversation with Ambassador Krill of the Nexian Accord that Helen found most interesting. The Nexians were an old species, one of the founding members of the Council, known for their wisdom and long-term thinking. "Your species has played a clever game," Krill said, his three eyes blinking in sequence. "You revealed just enough to establish respect, but kept enough hidden to maintain uncertainty." "We simply defended ourselves," Helen replied diplomatically. Krill made a sound that his translator rendered as laughter. "Of course. And the fact that nobody knows how many stealth ships you possess is merely a happy accident, yes?" Helen smiled but said nothing. "The question on everyone's mind," Krill continued, "is whether you truly have a fleet of invisible warships, or if the Nightfall is your only such vessel." "That is indeed the question," Helen agreed. "And you will never answer it." "No, we will not." Krill's eyes all focused on her. "Brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. By maintaining uncertainty, you have made every potential enemy hesitate. They cannot plan an attack when they do not know what defenses you have. They cannot risk a fleet when one invisible ship might destroy them all. You have weaponized doubt itself." "The Terran Confederacy seeks only peace," Helen said. "But you are prepared for war," Krill replied. "That is the mark of a species that will survive in this galaxy. The Vrax will not bother you again. Neither will most others. You have bought yourselves time and security without firing more than necessary shots. I respect that." Back on Earth, Admiral Karen Price stood in the Joint Strategic Command Center, reading reports from across the galaxy. The news from the Council session was good. Humanity had achieved full membership status. The immediate threats had been neutralized. The military budget for the next 5 years had been approved, with a focus on expanding the stealth ship program. Peter Nash came to stand beside her. "We are receiving requests from dozens of species wanting to establish formal diplomatic relations. Trade agreements, defense pacts. Everyone wants to be friends with humanity now." "Fear is a powerful motivator," Karen observed. "They would rather be our allies than risk being our enemies." "Do you think the strategy will hold?" Peter asked. "Eventually someone will discover the truth. We only have 5 stealth ships, not a vast fleet. What happens when they figure that out?" Karen considered the question carefully. "By then, we will have built more. The Nightfall and her sisters bought us time to expand our technology, time to build more advanced ships, time to establish ourselves as a power that cannot be easily challenged." Amy Sullivan joined them carrying a data pad. "Sir, we have a situation developing in the Outer Rim. The Kalroth clans are threatening one of our mining colonies. They claim the system belongs to them by ancient right." Karen pulled up the tactical display. "What assets do we have in that region? The destroyer Wellington is 2 days away. The frigate Liberty could reach the system in 4 days. And the ghost ships?" Amy checked her classified roster. "The Dark Star is currently on patrol in Sector 12. She could be there in 18 hours. Karen nodded. "Contact Captain Helen Grant aboard the Dark Star. Inform her of the situation." Let her decide if intervention is necessary. Yes, ma'am. Peter watched as Amy walked away to send the encrypted message. We are using the same tactic again. Let them wonder if we are watching. Because it works, Karen replied. The Calroth will hear about New Providence. They will know what happened to the Vrax. They will have to ask themselves, is there a human stealth ship already in that system? Are we willing to find out the hard way? And if they attack anyway? Then Captain Grant will show them the same lesson we taught the Vrax. Humanity protects its own. Across human space, the 5 ghost ships continued their patrols. The Nightfall had returned to her station in Sector 7, waiting in the darkness between stars. The Dark Star moved toward the outer rim to observe the Calroth situation. The Shadowfall, Eclipse, and Phantom maintained their positions in other strategic locations, invisible guardians watching over human territory. Captain Brandon Hughes sat in his command chair aboard the Nightfall, reviewing reports from the New Providence engagement. His crew had performed perfectly. Not a single mistake, not a single casualty. They had struck hard, accomplished their mission, and vanished again without revealing more than necessary. Kyle approached his chair. Sir, message from Admiral Price. She wants us to know the council session went well. Humanity has full membership status now. Good, Brandon said. That was the goal. We fought one battle to prevent 100 more. Do you think other species will challenge us? Kyle asked. Brandon looked at the tactical display showing the empty space around them. To any observer, this region of space was lifeless. No ships, no stations, nothing but cosmic dust and distant stars. They had no idea that one of humanity's most powerful warships was right here, watching, waiting. Some will test us, Brandon replied. They will probe our defenses. They will try to find our weaknesses. But each time they do, they will wonder if we are watching. They will hesitate. They will second-guess themselves. And that hesitation might be enough to prevent conflict. And if it is not enough? Brandon smiled grimly. Then we will remind them why humanity is not to be threatened, just like we did at New Providence. The Nightfall drifted through the void, silent and invisible. Around the galaxy, similar conversations were happening aboard the other ghost ships. 5 vessels, 5 crews, 5 promises that humanity would defend itself no matter the cost. On Earth, in the streets of major cities, people celebrated their new status in the galactic community. They did not know about the Nightfall or her sisters. They did not know about the stealth technology that had taken decades to develop. They did not know about the careful strategy that had been planned years in advance. They only knew that humanity was safe, that the threats had ended, that they could build their lives and their colonies without fear of conquest. And that was exactly how it should be, Karen thought. The people should live without fear. They should focus on building a better future. The burden of protecting that future fell to people like her, like Brandon, like the crews of the ghost ships who spent years in the darkness, waiting for a threat that might never come. But if the threat did come, they would be ready. The doctrine was simple and had proven effective. Let potential enemies see your strength once, then vanish. Let their imaginations fill in the rest. Let them fear the unknown more than the known. And most importantly, let them understand that humanity would never be an easy target. In the vast darkness between stars, the ghost ships waited, invisible, patient, watching, the guardians that nobody could see but everybody now feared. The message had been delivered. The galaxy had received it, and humanity had secured its place among the stars, not through conquest or intimidation, but through the simple truth that some threats were best left hidden until the moment they needed to strike. The Vrax had learned this lesson at New Providence. The Calroth would learn it soon if they were foolish enough to test humanity's resolve. and every other species in the galaxy would remember that empty space was never truly empty when humans were involved. Somewhere in the darkness, a ghost ship was always watching, always waiting, always ready, and that knowledge, more than any fleet of visible warships, was what would keep humanity safe in the years to come. "Nothing," Amy replied, "which is exactly what makes it so effective. Let them guess. Let them wonder. Let their imaginations fill in the gaps." Peter nodded. "The doctrine is working. We have revealed enough to make them cautious, but kept enough hidden to make them afraid." Karen looked at the tactical display showing the positions of Earth's 14 registered warships. Then she thought about the 5 ghost ships hidden throughout human space, the Nightfall and her 4 sisters, ships that existed in no public records, ships that only a handful of people knew about, ships that would remain hidden until the moment they were needed. "Humanity has entered the galactic stage," Karen said quietly, "and we have made our first statement. Not with threats, not with demands, but with a demonstration that we can protect ourselves. Now we wait and see how the galaxy responds." "Wait!" Jack called out, but it was too late. The ship was gone. Space appeared empty again, as if the battle had never happened. Only the floating wreckage of Vrax's ships proved it had been real. Danny sat down heavily in his chair. "Earth has been holding back. This whole time, they have been holding back. That ship, that technology, they could have ended any threat to humanity whenever they wanted." Jack nodded slowly. "They were waiting for the right moment, waiting for someone like the Vrax to push too hard. And now the entire galaxy is going to hear about this." He was right. Across Vrax space, the surviving ships from Krathax's fleet were spreading the news. A human ship had appeared from nowhere. A human ship had destroyed an entire Vrax battle fleet. A human ship that could not be detected, could not be targeted, could not be stopped. And nobody knew how many more ships like it existed, hidden in the dark spaces between stars, helpless, not weak, not prey. "All hands," Brandon announced to his crew, "prepare for combat operations. Remember your training. Stay calm. Execute your tasks. We are here to protect our people and send a message that humanity will not be pushed around." He took a breath. "Helm, bring us to firing position, nice and slow. Kyle, on my mark." The Nightfall drifted closer to the Vrax fleet like a shark approaching prey. The Vrax continued preparing to fire on the planet below, completely unaware of the predator that had positioned itself among them. Brandon watched the distance counter tick down. 3,000 kilometers, 2,500, 2,000, 1,500. "Admiral Krathax is giving the order to fire on the colony," Kyle reported. "Vrax weapons are powering up." "Not today," Brandon said quietly. "Kyle, decloak the ship. Let them see us. Then fire." The stealth systems deactivated. The Nightfall appeared on every Vrax sensor simultaneously, materializing out of nothing like a ghost, becoming solid. For exactly 2 seconds, the Vrax fleet stared at the impossible ship that had appeared among them. Then the Nightfall's weapons spoke, and the killing began. Jack could not speak. He could only stare at the impossible ship that had appeared from nowhere, a ship that none of the Vrax sensors had detected until the moment it chose to be seen. On the ship's hull, painted in dark gray letters that were almost invisible against the black surface, was a single word: Nightfall. Admiral Krathax's voice came through the communication channel, and for the first time, it carried a hint of fear. "What is that? Where did that come from?" The human ship's weapons began to glow.